Welcome to Hey Ghost Hey, the podcast about ghosts, ghost hunting, and other paranormal phenomena of the Pacific Northwest. I am your host, Charles Crooks, owner, tour guide, and psychic of Bellingham Ghost Tours. We are here because I like ghosts a lot. Now let's begin. Hello, my friends, and a very happy Halloween to you. We have made it. It is the reason for the season. And I hope you have an absolute spectacularly spooky day today. Or I guess even if you listen to this after Halloween, I hope it's still spooky for you. So for this year's episode, I thought we'd wrap up our time on Whidbey Island with one of my favorite stories I tell on the Practical Ghost Tour down in Coupeville. I think I like it because on the tours, I don't have a lot of ghost stories, for one, that are related to specific people. And we have a lot of ghostly active buildings in the area, but not many stories of historical figures that hang around as ghosts. So I find this one fascinating because not only is it tragic, while remaining a little bit mysterious as well. Also, I don't really have many gross stories that I share on the tours, and I think this is by far the most gruesome, so it definitely does scratch that little part of the horror fanatic in me. Everything I'm going to read is coming from Wikipedia, as that did seem to be the most comprehensive of all the accounts that I looked at together, and so I've just trimmed it down a bit. Keep in mind, I have found discrepancies to small details in the story, but at least this account of all the major key happenings that I found from this story to others were all the same. Colonel Isaac Neff Eby, aged 39 years old when he passed away, was the first permanent white resident of Whidbey Island, Washington. Eby was born in Columbus, Ohio in 1818. During his childhood, Eby's father, Jacob, moved the family to Adair County, Missouri, where a young man, Eby, was trained in the law. At age 25, Eby married Rebecca Davis, and they later had two sons, Eason and Ellison. Born with a naturally adventurous spirit, Isaac temporarily left his wife and young sons in Missouri to explore the American West, specifically the Pacific Coast. During his journey west, Eby briefly took his hand at gold mining during the California Gold Rush and then headed north to Oregon Territory. After arriving in the Puget Sound region, he went to work with the U.S. Customs Service. While with the service, Eby spent some time in Olympia, the city he is credited with naming in honor of the Olympic Peninsula Mountains to the west of the Puget Sound. Eby also sponsored a statute to name King County, Washington. Hearing of the islands in the north end of the sound, Eby came upon Whidbey Island and fell in love with the natural beauty, climate, and rich land perfect for farming. In October 1850, Eby moved from Olympia to Whidbey Island. When Congress passed the Donation Land Claim Act in 1850, Eby claimed 640 acres for himself and his family overlooking Admiralty Inlet, then wrote his wife to prepare a move west with their sons. The remainder of Eby's family followed in October of 1854. Among those of Eby's family who came to the Pacific Northwest were Eby's parents, Jacob and Sarah, siblings Mary, Winfield, and Ruth, Mary's two children, Almira and Polk Wright, and lastly a cousin, George Beam. Jacob Eby claimed ridgeland overlooking what is today called Eby's Prairie. On the same ridge, Isaac Eby built a blockhouse for protection against raiding attacks from natives. Isaac and Jacob Eby's land would prove to be some of the most productive in the area, and word of his fortune traveled. drawing settlers from the east into the region to starting a rush of settlers who claimed most of the prairie land by the beginning of 1853. By 1860, all of the best farmland had already been claimed. Rebecca Eby was never happy about the family's encounters with local indigenous peoples. Living some distance from the other Euro-American farmers, she stayed close to home managing the household during Isaac's long absences. Already weakened by tuberculosis, Rebecca died in 1853 following the difficult birth and subsequent death of the Eby's newborn daughter, Sarah. Eby soon married Emily Palmer Sconce, a widow with a daughter named Anna. In 1857, a party of northern, possibly Haida natives from the Coupeville tribe of Alaska traveled by canoe into Puget Sound on a mission of vengeance. Following the death of one of their own chiefs and 27 other tribal members in an attack by the USS Massachusetts the previous year, the party searched for a white Hyas-Taiyi Great Chief in retaliation. Originally, the intended victim was Dr. John Coe Kellogg, who lived near the present-day Admiralty Head Lighthouse. On the hot summer evening of August 11th, unable to locate Kellogg, who was out of the area, the natives beached at Eby's Landing and traversed the steep cliff up to Eby's home. Knocking on Isaac Eby's door, the natives called him out of the house, shot him dead, and scalped him. Emily and the children fled to Jacob Eby's blockhouse on the ridge. Unwilling to remain on the farm, Emily abandoned it, leaving forever with her daughter Anna. Isaac Eby's relatives raised Ellison and Eason, and the two brothers later divided their father's farm between them. There is question whether the raiders were actually Haida as inscribed on a historical marker at Eby's Landing. Traditional stories of the Qiqsquan-Kake tribe of Tlingits tell the raid being led by a female relative of the slain chief in the Massachusetts attack. Those stories also tell that the female leader of the raid was a member of the Tsagweddle clan. In fact, the Puget Sound Herald of Steilacoom published an article 15 months after Eby's assassination stating the Kake and Stikine nations, numbering a couple hundred, were responsible for the cold-blooded murder. However, it was never known which particular tribe perpetrated the death and beheading of Eby. And just a quick note here before I continue is that when I initially looked into the reports of this story, I found pretty much that scalping and beheading were used synonymously, and because I have found reports of both. And the reason why I think that's important, because there are all sorts of reports that say that the head was completely removed from the body and then taken, but then, of course, the word scalping is used, which would imply that you would just have part of that head that remained. But I do think, because we have so many accounts of this, that it was actually beheaded, even though a lot of the word use in this article is scalping or scalped. Okay, so continuing on. Isaac Eby's headless remains were interred in the original Eby family cemetery, located at Eby's Prairie on the bluff overlooking Isaac and Rebecca's home. Eby's first wife, Rebecca, was already interred there, along with their daughter, Hetty. The rest of the Eby family is officially interred at Sunnyside Cemetery, 50 feet from the burial place of Isaac. Captains Swanston and Charles Dodd of the Hudson's Bay Company steamer boat named Beaver attempted to purchase Eby's scalp about a year after his death, but were unsuccessful when the Kake Nation took the request as a first step in an attack of their village. It is rumored that the Kake refused to sell Eby's scalp because it was customary to dance around the scalps of their enemies killed in battle during annual feasts. They also believed the scalp held great family importance and should be handed down through generations. About 3 years after Eby's murder, Captain Dodd again attempted to purchase the scalp of his slain friend and was successful. Dodd acquired the scalp for a liberal reward of 6 blankets, 3 pipes, 1 cotton handkerchief, 6 heads of tobacco, and 1 fathom of cotton, and gave it to A.M. Poe, Esquire, to be returned to Eby's brother, Winfield. On April 5th, 1860, Winfield Eby noted in his diary the much-awaited return of his brother's, quote, poor head. And so this is a direct quote from his diary. Captain Coop got over from Port Townsend, bringing my friend A.M. Poe, Esquire. Mr. P. brings my brother's scalp, which was recovered from the northern tribes by Captain Dodd. At last, this memento is recovered. At last, a portion of the mutilated remains of my dear brother is returned. Near 3 years have elapsed since his murder, and now his poor head, or a portion of it, returns to his home. The skin of the head is entire contained, the ears and most of hair. The hair looks quite natural. It is a sad memento of the past. An end quote from the diary. And so here is where things, I think, start to become a little bit more mysterious. So while some historians insist Winfield, a prolific diarist, had the scalp buried with his brother's body, no record of this claim exists. After Winfield's death in 1865, at least 5 separate accounts maintain that Eby's sister Mary, Eby Bozarth, inherited the relic. Albert Kellogg, the son of Dr. John Kellogg, recalled visiting Bozarth 10 or 12 years after the murder, and she, quote, she showed the scalp lock still retaining the long black hair. It was the only thing of that kind I had ever seen, and I remember it caused cold chills to run over me, end quote. After Bozarth died in 1876, Eby's scalp was passed on to his niece, Elmira Enos. The next mention of its location occurred in 1892, when Elmira visited Whitby, an event noted by the Island County Times. In the newspaper's July 29, 1892 issue, it reported, quote, Mrs. Enos visited the Times office. She was a resident of the island when her uncle was killed and can relate things connected with that tragic affair as though it were but a recent incident, end quote. But Enos also visited an old friend, Hugh Crockett, who was quoted by the Times as saying that Enos told me only a few weeks ago that she had the scalp at her house in San Francisco. Those 2 articles are the most reliable accounts to date of where that sad memento of Eby's death was kept. At this time, only one other reference to the scalp's whereabouts has been found. According to family reports, the scalp was last known to be in the possession of the Elmira Enos family in California as of 1914. Even though the last remains of Isaac are still a mystery, it is believed that Isaac's ghost still roams the land to this day. He gets the classic ghost story treatment of being a lost soul who roams the land. I believe he has passed on, but we still probably have echoes of his tragic ending that could linger in the area. He is said to be seen as a lonely, wandering apparition, sometimes seen with a head, sometimes without it. He is even said to be seen as a mist in the shape of a man wandering the cliffs of Eby's Landing. You can also visit his old homestead on Whidbey Island, just outside of Coupeville, if you want a chance at seeing Isaac's apparition. It's said that ghosts will show for us if we call out to them, so if you find yourself on Whidbey Island, call out to Isaac and see maybe if he will show himself for you. Okay, and we are off on to story 2. So for this one, I thought I would tell a personal experience that I really haven't shared much with anyone at all. If you've been on any of my tours before, you know that I always talk about having boundaries with the spirit world. It's not just because it's a good practice, but I fully believe our souls cannot be taken from us unless we approve of it some way, shape, or form. I think this is something very much that goes true for possession and the darker types of hauntings as well. I don't talk about those things much on tours because I truly do believe those sorts of instances and entities are very rare. I do very much think that they exist, but I don't think people are encountering evil entities as much as they think they might be. I think there are all sorts of benign activities that can be quickly labeled as dark or demonic. So anyways, our story starts when I was a teenager in North Royalton, Ohio. I don't remember exactly when this dream happened, but I think it was possibly during a summer when I was off of school. Probably around ages maybe 16, 17 is my best guess. So as a young person, I would have terrible energetic boundaries. And I very much tested the idea of if I can't see it, then it's not real. If I did not have the physical proof, then again, it's just not real. I wanted tangible evidence of all the things, not just ghosts, but of anything paranormal or supernatural. I wanted to experience any and all of it. And I think when I wasn't having the encounters that I wanted, even if I did openly invite all of it in, I would push on those boundaries and push them even more in the hopes of experiencing something. And so what I didn't realize is that I think things answered, just not in the way that I was expecting them to. And so I've always been a very strong dreamer, to the point where I can feel exhausted after waking up because I feel like I've been up all night. My dreams are incredibly vivid and feel as real as being awake. I've seen some incredibly beautiful things in my dreams, from landscapes out of fantasy movies and the ability to fly freely. But on the other side of that, I've experienced very terrible things in my dreams, so things that were worse than any horror movie I had ever watched. Now, I don't remember the specifics around how this particular dream started. I can only remember the core part of it, so that's where I'll begin. I was at home, and we lived in a nice suburban housing development. Inside the home, everything felt normal. I came down the stairs to a doorbell that wouldn't stop ringing. It seemed like I was the only one in the home that heard it. No one else rushed to the door, even though I knew others were home with me. I opened the door to see who it was. As soon as I pulled it open, a wall of hot and humid air poured over me. As it washed across my face, it felt suffocating with its heaviness. Everything outside of the door looked like my neighborhood, but the feeling outside was completely different than inside. It felt like my familiar street, but there was something very ominous about it. The sky was a deep orange red that seemed to match the hot air that had just wafted in. But most importantly, there was a man standing at the door. He was dirty, had longer dark hair down to his shoulders, and he didn't say anything. He just had this presence about him, a presence that made me feel sick to my stomach. We stood for a few moments, just looking at each other. Suddenly, he reached across the threshold of the door inside the home and grabbed my right arm, trying to pull me outside. I resisted and remembered that his face didn't change. He didn't struggle, he just kept pulling, and he was very strong. I frantically had to lean back as I pulled with all of my might to try and save myself from falling outside. I started yelling out for my family, but no one came. I grabbed the door with my left hand and tried to start pulling it shut as I continued to retreat from him. At this point, my mom casually started to walk down the stairs and saw what was happening. After coming down about 3 stairs from the landing, she stopped and simply stared at us. I yelled out to her to help with everything I had, and I got no response. She just stood there and watched. Even though I was struggling against him, I started to gain ground with closing the door. I finally brought it around enough where I could lean on it and push it with the weight of my body. It was almost closed. All that was left was my arm that was still sticking out in his grasp. With a few violent tugs away from him, I ripped my arm free, snatched it inside, and closed the door, locked it, and fell against it, breathing heavily. My mom seemed to snap out of her trance and finish walking down the stairs. "Who was that at the door?" she asked without a care in the world. I never answered her as I sat shaking from fear, and she walked away into the kitchen. And that is all I remember of the dream. At the time, it seemed like just another nightmare, but I do remember it sticking with me even after I had been awake. I told my mom about the dream, to which she responded, "Ew, how creepy," but we never talked about it again ever after that. So fast forward to a few decades later, and I was in my psychic classes one day, and the memory of this dream came in very strong into relation what we were talking about. It hit me how important that moment was for myself because it felt like a precipice moment, like I was on the edge, potentially giving up a part of myself if I had to go with, or if I had agreed to go with that extremely scary man. So since having this realization, it's made me have much greater respect for the energetic world that I cannot see. Just because I cannot see it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And so it's really driven home the importance of having respectful boundaries more than ever. I only have the strong boundaries that I do because I have had so many experiences with energies that have come with very important learning lessons along the way. But I think another important aspect to note upon is that we always have choice. I had the choice to say no and pull away from my potential dream kidnapper. I also had a choice to give in and go with him. And maybe, in the end, it was just a dream or a bad nightmare. But this was one time I didn't want to really test those waters to find out. So, please remember that we have a say in what we experience, but just because we cannot see an energy doesn't mean that it doesn't deserve respect. I fully understand wanting to experience anything and everything that's out there, but I don't think we need to put ourselves in harm's way or any way that really compromises ourselves to do so. And that, my friends, is going to conclude our episode for today. I hope you have an incredibly wonderful and spooky Halloween. Remember that there will not be an episode next Tuesday since we have 2 this week, but we will resume with the remainder of my summer trip when I return the following week. So thank you so much for listening, and as always, stay spooky, my friends.